Hello and welcome to Ep.3 of Self-Authoring Career, where I'll be looking at what do you do when you can't see yourself walking your way into your boss's role. Because it's a very strange moment, isn't it? You've been looking at your boss's role and thinking, I don't want to do that. But this is a relatively new thing. I'll be looking at in this episode why that next step no longer feels right. The hidden cost of moving into a role that no longer suits you or that you want, and how you can start to separate the difference between what is fear of the next level and what is genuinely not the right next step for you, and how you can see the future that you generally want. So, why does the promotion that you've worked so hard towards feel so difficult and wrong when it finally arrives? And you might be starting to tell yourself a few things. You know, you've been working your whole career to keep progressing, to keep moving up the ladder. You've probably reached a head of department, director level. You may be the go-to second in command within your function, within your specialism. And people have already pinned it on you that you're the successor for your boss once they move on, or move up or move out, whichever direction. But you're the one that everyone is looking at. But now something very strange is starting to happen, that you may not actually want it. You're starting to think that to yourself. And that can cause something internally, can't it, in conflict? Because it's the expected route. Others expect it of you, you once expected it of yourself, but that gap has now started to close a little bit. The closer that you get to it, the more you start to doubt whether it actually is the very thing that you want. So you question whether you're losing your ambition, or whether it's just like, you get pre-wedding nerves. Maybe there's pre-promotion jitters that are happening. It's definitely a signal nonetheless. Without knowing the answer, it's definitely a signal. So that question becomes, what is that signal saying to you, and what can you do about it? Because there is a hidden cost, isn't there, of accepting a bigger role, stepping into that takes you further into a career that you already suspect that you may have outgrown. So on paper, it's going to look great. You move into a more senior role. It is a slight bump in your salary. Generally, internal moves are not huge leaps in terms of compensations. Let's say you get a 5 to 7% increase, which will very soon become the norm. Nice for the first month, and then it's just become very normal. You've already spent it every month. But the real cost is that it takes you further away from what you should really be doing. A different pathway that actually might be much more suited to you now, making it harder, of course, to course correct onto that right path. It only kicks something down the road, doesn't it? It's kicking the can down the road even further, knowingly or unknowingly. And it also kicks your happiness and your job satisfaction with it. And with so much of your time being spent at work, the one thing that you want to do is enjoy it. Otherwise, you suffer, the people around you suffer within your teams, and then you take it home with you, and your family suffer because you're not yourself. You're not the best version of you. And I don't think that's what you signed up for. I don't think that's what anyone really wants for themselves. So that's the real expense of not being able to answer this question one way or the other and taking the wrong move. A client so beautifully put it, that choosing safety, because sometimes that's what it can be when we don't want to admit that it's not the ladder for us anymore, choosing safety can kind of kill us on the inside. It does, right? It can dampen your spirits, and it can really dial down your potential, your enthusiasm, your performance, and also just your own confidence levels as well. So from where I'm sitting, climbing a ladder that you no longer want is the most expensive procrastination that there is. Every rung of that ladder raises the price of exiting, and not just financially, but those other reasons that affect you as a person, as the human experience part of that as well. But not wanting the promotion doesn't necessarily mean that you've lost your ambition. It may just mean that you need to reimagine what your career could now look like in this next chapter. There's many things that we can now go off and do. So what might that be for you now? So how can you tell if you're experiencing fear about stepping up or recognizing that you have outgrown the ladder altogether? This is the ultimate question that if you're in this space right now that you want to be trying to determine for yourself so you know how to move forward. Well, first of all, I would say that dread doesn't automatically give you a reason to turn down the promotion. The dread is data, but it's not the decision. So look at the data and see what that's telling you in order to make the decision. And it might tell you that something needs to be examined a little bit more closely about what you actually want now, what drives you at this stage of career. And if you don't know what that is, then maybe it's time to find out. This is what I call the reconnect stage, a chance for you to recalibrate your career around who you are today, not who you were when you first started out on this ladder all those years ago. So for some of you, if you're in a head of department director level, that could be 15 years ago. Some time ago, you're a different version of yourself now. You're not the same person that you were when you started out. So it's needed to truly know what's driving you. Is it the fear? Is it misalignment? And they sound different. So listen to what it's sounding like. Which one sounds like what you're thinking, what you're experiencing? A normal stretch of getting that pre-promotion nerves sounds different from misalignment. If it's more fear created from that pre-promotion jitters, then it's probably going to sound something like, I want this, but I'm worried that I may not be able to do it. So then this comes down to I don't know if I feel ready. So that's different because that's more competency based, isn't it? That's more confidence. That's more like, well, everyone else thinks I can do it, but I don't know if I actually can. I don't want to let people down. I don't want to look foolish. That's the kind of thought process that you'll be in. And you'll probably hear and recognize that there's anxiety underneath that, isn't there? You're interested in it and there's desire, but there is anxiety that is mixed up in that as well. If it's misalignment, it's going to sound different. It's going to sound more like, I know I could do it, but I don't want to do it. The version of life or career that I actually want for myself in this next phase, I don't know what that is maybe, but I know that it's not that. So that's different, isn't it? That's directional. That's not anxiety and fear that you're not able to do it. You know you can do it. It's just you just don't want it. You just don't envisage it for yourself any longer. So the revealing question really is, if I knew I would be successful in this role, would I still want it? If the answer is no, or if the answer is I don't know, it actually still points to misalignment over fear, which then leaves you needing to answer and understand what that now means as a next step for you. Once you've identified what matters with that, observing the thought process and that question, the next stage is to then reimagine what that progression could really look like for you, because you know the run-of-the-mill progression is not the route for you. So look beyond that next rung on the ladder and see what other forms of career progression could actually be available to you. Ones that can maybe be a pivot from the ladder that you're on, but they're not taking you back a step. You're not dropping down and starting over again. You're able to use your skills, your potential, ambition, and just switch it on, maybe the same ladder onto a new wall, or maybe you're able just to jump over and hop onto a different ladder that's not vastly different, still utilizing what you have built in career capital. And there'll be many different options, probably more than you can even imagine right now. In my experience in working with people, it's very difficult when you've been doing one thing for so many years to then reimagine how that can be repurposed into something else. I guess that's the reason why people like myself exist, to be able to help people see those options that they can't necessarily see themselves. And this is exactly what happened for a lovely lady that I was working with called Emily. And she told me that she didn't want to become her manager. She didn't want to be her manager's manager. Just kind of looking at that runway just wasn't exciting for her. But she didn't really know what the next step would be if it wasn't that. That's probably something that you can relate to right now if you're really looking at that next level going, I don't know if I want this. And once she reconnected with her values, her natural genius, and started to define what her professional purpose really was in this next stage and phase of career, she stopped assuming that her only option was to be the next level and to be a more senior version of the same work. Together, we actually identified a gap in the business. We actually identified a gap that she was able to see between what she was able to do and what was lacking in the business, and was able to actually propose a new role that didn't exist, and was able to show that really played to her strengths as being a real connector in the business. She deeply understood the industry. She deeply cared about the function and the people that she worked with, and really just became the first choice to be stepping into this newly created role that she had proposed in a business case. So Emily didn't lose her ambition or stop progressing, but she did reimagine the direction of what progress really looked like to her now that she was at this stage of her career. So the question is, what does it look like for you? If you're starting to think, I don't know if this is really the ladder that I want to keep climbing, what else could I actually hop over onto that would actually be fulfilling for me and still utilize all the career capital that I've built up over the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years in some instances? Because her next move and your next move will be a step forward. It's simply just really understanding what that could really look like in a new way. But if she hadn't stopped to reevaluate what that new direction even was, it just would never have happened, because she was the one that created it. She was the one that spotted it. So just because you can't see a different path doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So I encourage you to start to look at the difference between, is it fear and pre-promotion jitters, or is it that I just outgrown this ladder and I need to really figure out what that new one is? And if you find yourself in the latter, and you find yourself heading down a pathway that really just no longer fits for you, and you might need some help figuring out what that new one is going to look like for you, then perhaps we should speak to see how I might be able to help you find that next one. If you go to naturalgeniusacademy.com or see the link in the comments of this post, this live, then you can actually book a free next chapter strategy call with me, where we'll look at where are you now, what no longer fits, what is the next kind of chapter that you actually are trying to be creating, and what's currently keeping you stuck, so that if we both feel that there's something there that we can actually explore together, then we can look at what that might look like outside of that strategy call. So join me next week for episode 4, where I'll be exploring how you can figure this out. Bye-bye for now.